Good morning, everybody. I am Libby Saunier, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. Here at the Policy Institute, we really support evidence-based research and data related to how young children can be successful in school and in life. Today, we're fortunate to have a legal extern with us, Sam Biddick, who's going to talk to you about the Inflation Reduction Act. He had done some research for us at the Policy Institute to see what potential things were available for early care and education. But as we started to unpack all of his wonderful work, what we found out is that we really thought that this would be a good place to share with our K-12 advocates as well, to think about how pieces and parts of the Inflation Reduction Act could be applied to the K-12 system with all the needs that are there. So Sam, I will kick it over to you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Okay. Can everybody see this presentation?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sam. I've been working for the LPIC this semester, and this is opportunities for early child care and K through 12 settings in the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, so a little bit of background on this and why it matters. So as some of you guys might know, Louisiana has some of the highest air pollution of any state. According to the EPA, you probably heard the region in Louisiana referred to as Cancer Alley, where we have a lot of refineries. It is obviously good economically, but has some environmental effects, especially on children. So that's going to be a group that's particularly vulnerable to these effects of air pollution, and it has a lot of wide-ranging effects on development, such as neurodevelopment, cognitive ability. It can also have a lot of health effects, and it just puts children at a greater risk for all kinds of diseases, which is obviously really terrible and something we'd like to avoid. So what is the IRA? The IRA is the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. It's a federal law. The purpose of it was to reduce carbon emissions, to lower healthcare costs, to provide better funding for the IRS, and to improve taxpayer compliance in the process, just in general. So this webinar is going to cover opportunities in the IRA. They've added some block grants, so just money that you can apply for certain purposes, some tax credits and tax deductions, and it's going to talk about how you can update your energy systems in qualified facilities to be more energy efficient and thus save you money, but also possibly be able to get a grant or a credit or a deduction for that so that you can doubly save money. There's also going to be opportunities for transitioning to clean energy vehicles and a few other miscellaneous things for reducing emissions for a facility, improving energy resilience to things like climate issues, natural disasters, and more. So some important terms to discuss that are going to be referenced in this presentation that are relevant across the IRA. They can have effects like they might increase credit amount, or there might be some things that are reserved specifically for the people in these groups. They're going to be energy communities, non-attainment areas, and prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So first, energy communities is pretty relevant for us here in Louisiana. So for clean energy products, there can be up to 10% additional financial incentives for these projects that are located within an energy community. So what does that mean? It can mean one of three different things. They all apply. So brownfield sites, as defined by CERCLA legislation, that's one type of energy community. That is a tract by tract designation property-wise. That's something you'll probably know if you're on a brownfield site. It's something that has been labeled that because of pollution, and it's been taken over, and basically the idea is that these ones have a little bit more problems associated with putting these properties back into productive use in a community, and so they are eligible for additional funding. There's also an energy community, could be any place where there was a coal-fired power plant that has closed since 2010, or a coal mine that has closed since 2000. These are called coal communities, and they are another type of energy community. This one's not super relevant to Louisiana, but there are a few places where there are, I think there's like 3 coal-fired power plants in Louisiana and at least 1 coal mine. I don't think any of those have closed since 2010. So this one's not going to be as useful as the next designation, which is any metropolitan or non-metropolitan statistical area defined by the Office of Management and Budget, where 0.17% or greater direct employment, or at least 25% of local tax revenues, are related to extraction, processing, transport, or storage of coal, oil, or natural gas. So the inclusion of the oil and natural gas in that one makes it pretty relevant to Louisiana. There's going to be a lot of statistical areas that are going to fall into that definition. So I'm going to show you guys a map. Okay, here's just like a bridge list, or a truncated one. Brownfield sites, you can find out there's available data. You would have to look property by property. You probably already know if your property is a brownfield site, because it's going to have a ton of tax implications and property implications. Coal communities, energy communities, and then I've included a link. These slides are going to be downloadable and made available to all participants. So here is a map of the United States. As you can see, we do have a lot of energy communities in Louisiana, especially in South Louisiana. And here, this is overlaid of all the different types of energy communities. So we have definitely some of those 3rd category energy communities, as well as some brownfield sites you can see on there. And so this is going to provide an additional financial incentive. So you'll see me reference in a lot of the programs that are in the IRA, you can get up to 10% more if you're in an energy community, or you can get an additional benefit if you meet these prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. Non-attainment areas, that's another one that is eligible for extra incentives, or it might be designated just for non-attainment areas. So non-attainment area comes from environmental law. It's a Clean Air Act term. And so every state is required to divide up areas and label them, whether they're non-attainment, attainment, or I think it's like unlisted or something. There's a 3rd category. But non-attainment means that there's a standard set for certain pollutants and that area is not in it. And so a cursory look into this, we do have quite a few parishes that are in non-attainment for at least 1 pollutant. So that's going to be Evangeline Parish, St. Bernard Parish, Ascension, EBR, Iberville, Livingston, and West Baton Rouge. There may be more because these are constantly being updated. This is as of right now. These areas are in non-attainment. So if you have a facility located in that area, you might be eligible for additional funding, or you might be the only eligible participant, which would increase your chances of getting that funding. And prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So this is another way to get some of these increased tax benefits, or it might be a requisite in order to get some of these tax benefits. It's just an average wage and benefits set for a project within a particular location in a particular industry. So if you were doing construction work in a particular parish, that's going to, in order to get some of these benefits, you would have to pay the minimum standard wage and benefits in order to get some of these tax benefits associated with it. If you're constructing now, basically, because we're after January 29th. So there's another link where you can look up your area and what kind of work it is, and it'll tell you what those requirements are. And this is going to apply to several of these sections, and I'll bring it up as I go through these sections. Okay, so the first part of this presentation this is just an overview of what kind of funding opportunities we are looking at here. There's going to be opportunities for updating energy and ventilation systems, for transitioning to clean energy vehicles, mostly electric, monitoring and mitigating air pollution, as well as energy and water efficiency and affordable housing. And there's a couple of miscellaneous ones where it's just mitigating the effects generally. So this can actually be kind of a diverse range of options. It's kind of an open-ended, but you should be thinking about your facility and keeping in mind what do I actually need. Obviously, everybody wants to reduce air pollution. Everybody wants to reduce their energy costs, but also things like noise barriers or infrastructure that's not conducive to walking or transportation, or maybe you live in a flood area and it's got a lot of storm runoff. There's a couple of different outside the box applications for these that could be really interesting to apply. And this is just a list of the different sections in the IRA that we are going to cover, just an index, and let's just get started. The first one is going to be Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grants in section 60201. Block grants are just that. They're money that you get. You don't have to, it's not, a kickback on your taxes. You can get it if you qualify and are approved. So this is for nonprofit organizations. It doesn't necessarily exclude for-profit organizations, because nonprofit organizations are still eligible if they work in partnership with schools or with a for-profit or a community organization. And so this is a grant, and it can be used for updating these heating and ventilation systems, for setting up technology to monitor, prevent, and remediate pollution, to mitigate climate and health risks for urban heat islands, extreme heat, wood heater emissions, and wildfire events, for climate resilience and adaptation, and reducing indoor toxins and indoor air pollution. So this one is kind of a wide range of things that it could be applied for, and it would be a great opportunity for schools in partnership with nonprofits if they want to implement, say, some sort of air purification and air pollution testing system, or address, a heat island, putting more greenery into a facility to reduce, some of the effects of, like, say, urban concrete heat islands. So the EPA is going to be looking for projects developed by community-based nonprofits, collaborating with other stakeholders like local business and local government, that addresses environmental or public health issues in their communities. And it's targeted at communities that are disproportionately harmed by environmental pollution. I don't believe this is one that is limited to energy communities, but it is one where being an energy community, so especially being in a location like Cancer Alley, does just put you higher on the list and more likely to receive that grant funding. The EPA committee that is in charge of this, basically, the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers program, is expected to begin operations in early summer 2023. And that will probably include things like another webinar such as this, but focus exactly on this and the grant writing process. It's not available to apply yet, but you should be monitoring the EPA website, because the notice and comment period for this is closed, which means that they are working on the final grant application process, and that should be going live on their website pretty soon. And these are the eligible entities. So it can be a partnership between a local government or institution and a community-based nonprofit, or it could just be a nonprofit. All right, this one's actually not in the IRA, so it's not on that index list, but it was brought up by another member of the LPIC, and it seemed to really fit in. Plus, it's available now. So this is called the WIN grant, the Voluntary School and Childcare Lead Testing and Reduction Grant Program. And it's just exactly what it says on the tin. You can get grant funding to test, and if you find out that, the lead levels in your facility are unacceptable, to get funding for remediation for lead contamination in drinking water at schools and childcare facilities. So if you are operating out of an older building, this would be an incredible program to look into, because there's a not insignificant chance that there may be lead paint, lead pipes, etc. This one's another one administered by the EPA through the states. So the state department that you're going to look at is the Department of Health and the Office of Public Health, Bureau of Engineering Services, Safe Drinking Water Program, and Lead Program. I've also included the form and a link, which you can find on these slides if you download them. And the eligible entities are public schools and childcare, including private care facilities. So even if you are a for-profit childcare or a public school or a different nonprofit childcare program, these all are eligible. If you have students, if you have children, they want to give you money to make sure that there's not going to be unacceptable levels of lead in that environment. And priority is given to underserved or low income communities and childcare facilities for children 6 and unders, and of course, older facilities built before 1988 that are more likely to have some of these toxins. So the next one is funding to address air pollution at schools. This is another grant program where you can get funding for activities to develop environmental quality plans in order to monitor and reduce ongoing air pollution hazards. So this is to implement things like air quality testing. You work with your school to identify risk and create a plan to tackle those and mitigate ongoing air pollution hazards. So this could be within the facility itself, or if you are in an area that is struggling with air pollution, then to monitor outside the ambient air quality of that region and put in measures that may reduce the risk on that facility. So this is going to be an opportunity for individuals, public, nonprofit, private agencies, institutions, and organizations. And the grant application is still forthcoming, which is why I did that WIN grant first. If you are extremely concerned about this, this is where you should go first, through the LA Department of Health website, because this will be able to start sooner. But there is additional money coming down the pipeline, which is why you should be aware of this next one. So that's another one to monitor the EPA website. Okay, improving energy efficiency, water efficiency, and climate resilience of affordable housing. This one is more geared toward micro center style early child care facilities, because this one is loans and grants to improve energy or water efficiency, specifically in the housing and urban development subsidized housing. So section 202, 811, section 8. This is so that someone who is operating a child care facility out of their home, perhaps, and their home is in subsidized housing, they can get this grant or perhaps a direct loan to improve the water efficiency or the heating and cooling efficiency in their home. And this will reduce their overall bills, their overhead, and it could potentially just be paid directly by a grant or with a loan that has a much more favorable interest rate. So it will save you money in the long term. Potentially, you might not even have to pay for it, or you would get, a little bit more financial leeway in order to make that possible. So might not really apply to our public school K through 12, but it could. And then again, you might have, students who are in affordable housing that they could be made aware of this possibility. Energy efficient commercial buildings deduction. So this is just for any and all buildings, including your private childcare providers, private schools. You can get a tax deduction to increase building efficiency by 25%. So building energy efficiency. If you want to update or replace lighting so that it's less energy intensive use of lighting, cooling, ventilation, water systems, there's a base deduction of 50 cents per square foot, and it can be increased for each percentage point of energy efficiency. So if you look at the options and there's one that increases your energy efficiency by 25%, but another one can maybe be like 30, 35%, you get more money back from with that tax deduction. So that would be something to look into if you have a facility that has pretty high energy costs and you're looking for a way to offset those costs and possibly mitigate the upfront cost of fixing that system. This is another one where you get a bonus deduction. It's kind of incredible, of $2.50 per square foot if you meet those prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So that would require you to look at the area. Let's say you're updating your HVAC system or your water system. You would look at your area and the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements for that particular kind of work, and you can get up to $2.50 per square foot. And then if you increase in energy efficiency, you can increase it by increments of 10 cents for each square foot, up to $5 per square foot. So there's kind of like a big sliding scale where if you really try to maximize your benefits here, you can get a lot back. Tax exempt entities cannot directly use these deductions, but their contractors can. So if you're a tax exempt entity and you're like, but I want to use this deduction, you could just find a contractor who does that kind of work and work it out with them and say, you can use this deduction and maybe pass on some of that benefit to me, which is a little bit of leverage you would have in that negotiation. Yes, okay, so this is just kind of restating it in a bit more technical language, but you can allocate that deduction if you're tax exempt. You can take the deduction the year that they're placed into service, and obviously there's that bonus that I talked about. All right, so this is some extensions to the tax credits for clean energy investment and new clean electricity tax credit for investment. This is one for large scale facilities. This is the one that if you've got your, say like high school campus or something like that, because this is about like actual energy generating systems. So let's say you want to reduce your energy costs and you've got this giant gymnasium and you're thinking about solar panels on top or something like that. And you want to offset your energy use that way. It's got two tiers. There's the one smaller than 1 megawatt of electrical or thermal energy, and then one larger than 1 megawatt. And so they're going to have different returns. You can either get a tax credit of 30% for the smaller one, and then the base credit is 6% on the larger one. But if you meet those prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, it's upgraded back to the 30%. And this one has a direct pay option. So if you want this tax credit, but you can't really wait until tax season to pay for it, you might be able to get a direct pay, which is that they just take the amount of the credit and you can apply it directly to this if you are interested in updating your energy system this way. And this one also has an increased benefit for those projects in energy communities. So large facilities located in an energy community that maybe have the space for something like solar panels, this could be a way to really offset the costs of your energy bill. Okay, neighborhood access and equity grant program. This one is that catch-all I was talking about. So this is a grant. Again, it's just money. You don't have to do it. You don't have to file your taxes to get it. You have to just go through the grant application process. And this one, it's pretty broad goal. So the goal is to support neighborhood equity, safety, and affordable transportation access. So it can be used to remove, replace, or improve surface transportation facilities. It's designed for the disadvantaged and underserved communities. And this one is one where it's like, maybe you've got a noise problem. You've got a location that is right next to a busy interstate, or you're in an area where there's just like a lot of heat problems. You're in an urban heat island. You've got problems with your drainage and storm runoff. This is really flexible. And
Could
so
crime be an issue?
I'm sorry?
Could crime be an issue?
You know, they say safety. They've got a, I I would say try it because it seems like this grant is written to be a little bit creative with. I can't guarantee, but if you have issues with transportation, if the safety is affecting access and like walkability or the ability of children to get to school and that sort of thing, I would think that that maybe could apply. I would say go for it. Specifically because it has the language of car centric. And so whenever I read this one, I thought of like, okay, if you have a location that children, maybe it's a low income, not every family has a car. Children either have to take the bus or someone has to give them a ride or something like that. If walkability is an issue, and I would say crime definitely impacts walkability and whether or not parents feel like it's safe to let their children walk or bike to school. I think that that would fit within the parameters of this one for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this one is one, it's a little far-fetched, but I say be creative with it. Think about, what kind of landscaping might make it more accessible for car-centric areas, what kind of weather incidents you have, definitely crime. And yeah, this one's kind of an open option for. And speaking of transportation, this is going to be the second sort of like set of opportunities within this. So there's also quite a few grants and tax credits for reducing emissions. Like I said, the IRA, the goal, it was obviously had a bunch of goals about taxes and inflation, but additionally, it is trying to move industries towards greener technologies. And transportation is like the #1 offender. That's where we get the majority of our greenhouse gases from. So there's a bunch of incentives built into this for 0 or low emission vehicles. And that's going to be this clean heavy duty vehicles grant and the qualified commercial clean vehicle tax credit. So starting with the clean heavy duty vehicles, this is just grant money and it's for class 6 and class 7, which is these weights between about 19,500 pounds and 19,500 pounds and 33,000 pounds. This is going to be your school bus size vehicle. So if you are in, you're providing services where you have like large scale transportation needs, this is going to be one to look at. And it's definitely, it requires a lot of thought about how you're going to run this kind of transportation system, because there is quite a bit of money earmarked for these, especially for those communities located in areas designated for non-attainment. Like this, it's got 400 million set aside just for them. But you really got to think about your infrastructure, because you can save a bunch of money using low emission electrical vehicles, but you definitely need the infrastructure there, because as some of you might be aware, the charging system for electrical vehicles is not exactly at the state it needs to be in the United States. You can definitely run into some issues not having a charging port available. But Head Start is one of those eligible recipients specifically named, as well as states, municipalities, tribes, nonprofit school transportation associations. So if you've got some aftercare program that is a nonprofit but does its own transportation, and eligible contractors. This grant is important because not only can you use it for purchasing those electrical vehicles, you can also use it to install necessary infrastructure and train your workforce to work on it. So if you are maybe looking at updating a fleet of school buses, this would mean that you could also update, say, the parking where the school buses park. You can add a charging port there. And obviously, most school systems are not thinking about completely replacing their entire fleet, but you could add maybe 1 or 2 at a time in order to update your fleet, reduce emissions, and also take advantage of these grants, because they're trying to pay for it for you. So that's a really nice deal. And then there's also a tax credit. So you can get the grant. You could also apply for the tax credit for this. And this is another one to offset this cost of transitioning. So you can get a tax credit based on the type of the vehicle that you get. So you can get a tax credit of up to 30%. of an EV or the incremental cost against that of a comparable vehicle, whichever is lesser. And then it's got 2 tiers again, so you can get up to 40,000 for vehicles weighing more than 14,000, and for less than 14,000, you can get 7,500. And this is another one that is available for school districts. It's available for Head Start and early childhood programs if they use those kinds of commercial vehicles for their transportation. And this is another one that's got that direct pay option. So if you want to take advantage, let's say maybe you didn't get the grant, but you apply for the tax credit, but you're like, I would really like to be able to buy it now and not have to wait until tax season to get that credit back on my taxes. You can get it directly if you are a tax exempt entity. So this is some additional qualifications for this tax credit. You have certain requirements. The battery rating needs to be not less than 7 kilowatt hours. There's no limit on the number of credits that the business can claim, but they're not refundable. So once you max out your credits to where your the amount you owe would be 0, you don't get further added back. The vehicles must be manufactured by a qualified manufacturer. So I've included a hyperlink to who qualifies as a qualified manufacturer of these vehicles. And then the tax form for this is still being finalized, but it is available in its current form to look at. And I have included that link here. And that brings us to the end of these programs. I've included an additional PDF that really goes into detail on all of these programs. They've got a few others, and this is where I got a lot of this information, and that's it, unless there are any questions.
Thanks so much, Sam, for sharing all this. It's a lot of information, but we wanted to really be able to put it out there for people to start thinking about it, because it's not an area that early childhood or K-12 would necessarily think about. Oh, there might be opportunities for us in our areas. So thank you again for taking all the time to do that.
Oh, no problem. I very much enjoyed it.
Good.
I hope it was useful for someone.
I think it will be, and we'll post this on our YouTube channel and send out to everybody that registered a recording of this, as well as the PDF that of the PowerPoint that Sam has shared with us. So if there are no questions, unless Todd, you have one, we will wrap this up in a bow.
Wanted to know if I could get a copy of the presentation, and you responded to that.
You got it. Good deal. Well, I hope everybody has a good weekend. Again, thank you, Sam and Todd. Thanks for coming. And then thanks for everybody that will watch the recording. Bye-bye.
Thanks.